national arena. Rest of the time, we don't hear about the Northeast in our mainstream media. So today we have a very eminent panel with us to throw some light on how Northeast and the issues related to the Northeast are nowhere to be seen in our mainstream media. So we have Patricia ma'am with us. She is a social activist, journalist and editor of Shillong Times. And I guess her total experience must be, that greater than the average age here. Am I right? So, welcome ma'am. She is the editor of Shillong Times from Meghalaya. We also have Anuradha with us. She is an independent journalist and she writes on media, culture and politics. Previously, she has worked with Economic Times and Telegraph, Calcutta. And last but not the least, Mr. Karma, my dear friend. He is the editor of East Mojo and in a career spanning more than 2 decades, he has worked as a broadcast journalist and anchor with CNBC and CNN. And he has also been awarded the prestigious Ramnath Goenka Award, the Oscars of journalism, twice. Okay. So now we don't want to make this session boring for you. So I hope that it will be a very interesting and insightful session. So now Karma will take us to a joyful geographical ride to the Northeast. Over to you, Karma.
Thank you. Khamma Gani to all.
Wow.
I just am in love with Rajasthan. A lot of people are in love, it's cliched. But I have cycled from Bikaner to Jaisalmer once. I was much lighter. So this is my Northeast. Every now and then, Patricia ma'am will maybe stop me and correct me because even I don't know so much about Northeast. How many of you all know about Northeast? Can confidently say that you know about Northeast? One? Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm just going to see what happens is that when you think Northeast, we call rest of India, mainland India, right? So everybody, whenever people are in Northland, say, oh, you're from mainland India. Because the rest of India also sees us as Northeast. But itna simple nahi hai. Northeast is a very complex region. We are 8 states. And we share thousands of kilometers of border with Myanmar, Bangladesh, and a massive border with Tibet. I don't say China, because China occupied Tibet. So, Tibet, that's Arunachal Pradesh. Itna अच्छा बोलने वाला था, भूल गया थोड़ा. So, every time I meet my friends or go to a party, especially in South Delhi and Mumbai, people tell me, oh Karma, मेरा भी एक दोस्त है Northeast में. एक दोस्त है तो होगा, ठीक है. But their first thing is, okay, impression जमाना है, इसलिए बोल दूं कि मेरा भी दोस्त है Northeast में, तो थोड़ा familiarity हो जाता है, and they are also comfortable. And most of the time they say, वो नाम क्या है, नाम पता नहीं. वो तेंजिंग वेंजिंग कुछ करके था. मैंने बोला वो तेंजिंग कहीं धर्मशाला से तो नहीं है? हाँ, वो तो धर्मशाला से है. धर्मशाला भी क्या Northeast में है क्या? मैंने बोला धर्मशाला तो दूसरा स्टेट है. तो यहाँ से शुरू करते हैं अपना जर्नी सिक्किम. हाँ, Sikkim was taken over by India in 1974. One gunshot was fired by the Indian army, killing 1 sentry guard at the king's palace. And the king immediately rushed down and said, no bloodshed. There was no bloodshed. There was only 1 person who was killed when India took over Sikkim in 1974, the year I was born. And if you see Sikkim, you see that tip, that's North Bengal. It consists of Kalimpong, Darjeeling, Dwars, a lot of those areas. They are closer to Sikkim and the Northeast than Bengal because of the language, because of the people, because of the tribes that are there in these areas, yeah? So that is North Bengal. And at one time, this area was also part of Sikkim, and the king gave it to the Britishers to enjoy their summer holidays because they needed to get away from Calcutta and go to a nice mountainous location. But now it's crazy. So a holiday in Darjeeling is quite a nightmare, even in Gangtok, because now as you come this side, most of the people will tell you, oh, you are going to Northeast, is it safe? Yeah, that's the impression, because you still feel that they are militants, you still feel that they're... Now, as you enter, that's the border, you enter West Bengal, you enter to us, and there's an area called Kokrajhar, yeah? We had the Bodo militancy there, yeah? So this is the area around this part. Now, Bodos, tribe, distinct language, distinct culture, they are in Assam, they were fighting, yeah? It was another movement. And during that time, there's a beautiful national park here, World Heritage Site, Manas National Park, which has elephants, tigers, a great density of rhinos. That place was nearly wiped out because the militants found it easy to live in those jungles and hunt those animals, yeah? That's that part. Now, as you come this side, this entire, the biggest, one of the biggest states, most populous is Assam. Assam has seen its share of movement, yeah? It's an internal fight for identity against outsiders. So there was a Assam Accord, which was signed. If you want to stop me, yeah? So above Assam, and in Assam still the militancy is still on, because the Bodos have signed the pact, but the Alpha, they have still not gotten into any peace agreement with it. Although violence has gone down, attacks have gone down, but often we hear young people, especially from this part of Assam, Upper Assam, join the movement, yeah? And most of the leaders are in Myanmar. Now this is Arunachal Pradesh, and why the national media doesn't really care about Arunachal Pradesh? वहाँ internet connection उतना ज़्यादा भी नहीं है, और TRP भी नहीं है यहाँ से जैसे इधर आते हैं ना, तो इसलिए वो non-TRP area है national media के लिए. And again, Arunachal Pradesh is also very diverse. There are mountains. I mean, it is one of the most beautiful places, I would say, not just in India, but the world. पर पहुंचने में जो आपका बैक साइड और जो ये पीछे का जो बैंड बजता है गाड़ी में, it's quite challenging, but now the roads are improving. This time, I drove from Guwahati right till Tawang, and the roads are fantastic. And on that circuit, on the Tawang circuit, there is one wildlife sanctuary, and there's one bird which is found nowhere else in the world, but only there. It's called the Bugun Loichikla. And it's just a fascinating story which nobody will tell you because it's too far. That bird is only found there, very rare, and the Bugun tribe. Now, Bugun tribe is also one of the tribes that are getting lost. There are only 2,000 tribes. So they are protecting that bird. That 2,000 people are protecting that bird. So that's where it's happening. And here again, you'll see diverse. इधर तो लोग जाते ही नहीं, side Dibang Valley and all. Recently, around 20 workers from Assam got lost. They were working in a BRO project somewhere here along the Indo-Tibet border. They got lost. National media में तो नहीं आया था. तो हम लोगों ने follow किया story. उसमें पता चला कि contractor ने उन लोगों को 20 लाख में बेच दिया था. और उसके बाद they didn't have, they wanted to go home, they didn't get money, so they ran away. तो भागने पर जंगल ही जंगल है. So out of the 20, 4 died in the jungle because of hunger. The rest were rescued by local hunters and local villagers and all, and they were brought and they were flown back. वो story आपको सुनेगा ही नहीं. ये area है Kohima, Imphal, Aizawl. You see this Nagaland and Mizoram. This area is K-pop. There's a lot of K-pop here. You'll see more K-pop stars here than in Korea, yeah? But apart from that also, very challenging because we still have a very, between the NSC and IM and the government of India, they've signed a peace agreement, but nothing is clear. They say that they signed a peace agreement. So the people here are very edgy. We just did a documentary last month on this, how edgy the people are. क्योंकि लोगों को पता ही नहीं कि peace आने वाला है कि नहीं. But people really want peace and they want to join the mainstream. They don't want to be in. Yeah? Mizoram, peaceful, but what the Mizos are doing, rest of Northeast doesn't know, and the Mizos don't want to tell us what they are doing. They are a very close-knit society, and they've been there because they are only one people जिसको कि government of India ने Air Force use किया था. India used Air Force against our own people here in Mizoram. So they are, very close-knit people, and now suffering because the pandemic. They've got the African swine fever. Lots of pigs died because it's the mainstay. Now they are also facing a kind of crisis, a financial crisis. So this year we are expecting a major crisis here in Aizawl. So this is Tripura. I can't say a lot about Tripura because I have not gone there really. Yeah, but there's been a huge pressure on Tripura because of the migrants coming in from Bangladesh. And finally, Shillong ke baare mein to aap jante hi ho. Rock capital of India, and Patricia ma'am will be able to tell you. So from now on, when somebody tells you Northeast, don't think of Northeast. Think of the various states. 230 se zyada tribes hain. Each tribe has its own ego. Each tribe has its own identity. कोई tribes leather jacket बहुत पसंद करते हैं. वो लोग leather jacket जिंदगी में एक बार खरीदना उनका mission रहता है. कोई tribe का वैसा mission नहीं है. तो it's a great place. Sorry for taking so much time. और बहुत कुछ मैं भूल गया हूँ because I wanted to say.
Thank you, Karma. So now when Karma has set the context, both geographically and culturally. So ma'am, I just want to know that this entire recent talk of Act East policy of Indian government. So how does it translate for the people of Northeast? And like Karma said that, the Northeast, all these 8 states and with all individual states, they are so diverse. So for example, in Meghalaya, there are Khasis, there are Garos. So how does this Act East policy translates for the people of Northeast states?
Thank you, Salik. Good morning to all. And how many of you have read India's Northeast Resurgent, a book written by noted journalist, very senior person, and an ethnographer of sorts, Mr. B.G. Verghese. I think that book gives you a very holistic treatment of the region. And like Karma said, it's a region that is as diverse as any space in this country. It is occupied by people of 2 major races, the Tibeto-Burmans and the Austro-Asiatic race. I belong to the Austro-Asiatic race. In the same state of Meghalaya, we have the Garos, who are Tibeto-Burmans, and the twain doesn't meet. We don't understand each other's language, and although we are both matrilineal, in culture, but we behave very differently culturally. I don't want to come straight to the Act East policy because I think it's a big hoax. It didn't start recently. It started in the 90s. It was called the Look East policy. For some reason, Government of India touted this policy and believed that all those 7 northeastern states with their own problems, their own ethnic conflicts, their inability to produce anything of substance, in terms of capacities, in terms of economic scale, that we were going to engage with Southeast Asia. We were going to be economically engaged with them. I don't know who floated this idea, but actually the Look East policy benefited the eastern coast of India. I think Tamil Nadu did a lot of business through the Look East policy. So essentially the Northeast is an overbridge. We call it an overbridge. Everything happens across the borders, and we are just providing the necessary kind of infrastructure. And now with Myanmar in so much turmoil, recently you saw that they've killed certain people, they've killed journalists. I think that policy has become unstuck. And this policy is, it becomes just a talking point for the Ministry of External Affairs people, retired diplomats and all those. They constantly have meetings and they are allocated funds, but we from the region don't usually participate in those debates because we are treated like we are not needed in, we are peripheral to the whole scheme of things. But actually, if you're talking about trade and commerce, unless the people engage, unless the Act East policy becomes a talking point in colleges and universities and schools, then how do we engage? How do you expect only government officials to engage? The whole region, especially the Mizos, the Garos, the Nagas, they are excellent weavers. And some of those weaves are exhibited in London, recently in Japan. They have a very huge market, but they need a niche market. You can't expect that region to produce bulk. I don't know how many of you know that in Meghalaya we produce turmeric called lakadong, which has the highest curcumin content from all the turmerics in the world at 7.9%, and therefore has a very high medicinal value. And I tell everyone who comes to Meghalaya to please take back turmeric. That's one thing that we can be proud of. And even there, we can't produce huge scale of it. So whatever is produced in the northeastern states, I'm sorry to use that word, it's kind of allergic to me, but in each of the 7 states actually cannot be produced on a mass scale, and therefore the Act East policy has to take cognizance of this, which it hasn't. And I repeatedly say that please stop having these seminars and workshops if you haven't been able to demonstrate one successful model. And now, as we speak, a lot of people have been taken, journalists have been taken to Thailand, for a sort of an op-ed session and business to business. This has been happening in the past also. Business people talking to other business people in Thailand, but it ends that way. It doesn't carry on beyond that point. So coming back to the 7 northeastern states, sorry Karma, that I always tend to forget Sikkim is part of us because it only was attached to the 7 states for convenience of governance when you had the Department for the Development of the Northeastern States, which later on became a ministry. It's called the MDONA. And this was created essentially because another institution called the Northeastern Council couldn't do what it was assigned to do. The Northeastern Council was at one time created to look at the security aspects of the region. It was under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, after 2002, it has come under the Ministry of the Development of Northeastern States or Northeastern Region. It's so funny that you create an institution to hasten the development in the region, and then you locate that institution in Delhi. So all the files from the region, from all the 7 states, have to go all the way to Delhi. Maybe the only thing that the Modi government has done, which merits some credit, is to ensure that some minister or the other visits one of these northeastern states in a fortnight, and then that they meet communities and they give a report when they go back to Delhi. So far, 42 ministers have visited the region. I haven't seen any miracle happening, but that's what is happening as a kind of a photo ops again. What is very, very worrying about the 7 states of the Northeast is that they are in a very ecologically sensitive zone. We are a biodiversity hotspot. We do have some of the, the last existing animal species, bird species, but we're also very, very vulnerable to climate change, and we have seen this happening in the last few weeks. We've had massive floods. People in the Barak Valley are still dealing with the floods. We have huge landslides. 42 people died in Manipur. Some are still missing in action. So we don't seem to be taking all these warnings of nature seriously. So you cut through the hills, you want to take railways to Manipur, and you have these huge landslides. Maybe you haven't done enough geological studies. So these are issues we are dealing with on a daily basis, and somehow we've learned to understand that it's pointless looking at the government. People are really subsisting on their own wisdom. You know, the 7 states of the Northeast were not created to be economically viable. They were created for political expediency, and therefore they rely very heavily on the center for their resources. And much of those resources that have come in the last 50 odd years have all gone into private pockets. They have created a tribal elite, which is very sad. We call ourselves tribal communities, but amongst tribal communities today, we have the landless and the landed. The landed are the tribal elite that have cornered off all the resources. And the sad thing about what the government of India does is that it does not monitor. It does not monitor the spending that it does in that region. From 2014, we are told about 25 to 26,000 crores of rupees have been pumped in for healthcare alone, just healthcare. And yet, recently, Niti Aayog did the study, and they found that Meghalaya has come down to the level of those Bimaru states in terms of number of women suffering from anemia, 56%, the number of malnourished children, stunted children, wasted children. So we are not really getting anywhere, and as a population, I don't know, we seem to be seized by some sort of a paralysis. So we are all just struggling.
So I want you to throw some light on nationalism versus subnationalism, but before that I want to bring in Anuradha. So Anuradha, you come from a region which is geographically northeast, but it's politically and culturally very different in terms of the identity politics. So tell us something about the identity politics and how it plays out there, and also since few of us know about Darjeeling as tea town and the place where Mehuna was shot, so does it alienate outsiders from its ugly realities? So share some views on that thing.
Hello, good morning. I'm I'm sandwiched between two great speakers, and I'll try to do my best. But I think he spoke of Darjeeling tea, so maybe we begin with the tea. How many of you consume Darjeeling tea? Yeah, you do? Yeah, I'm a little sad to not find a sachet in this hotel, but they have Assam tea, but no Darjeeling. And where is Darjeeling? In the northeast? Yeah? North Bengal, that's right. So yeah, it's ironical that I'm in a panel, which is a northeast panel, but I'm from North Bengal. And North Bengal is geographically in the northeastern part of India, but Darjeeling is not a part of northeast as we call it, the political northeast. Now, whoever likes Darjeeling tea here, and Darjeeling tea is very famous. We all know Mr. Narendra Modi, our Prime Minister, when he met Queen Elizabeth, I'm told, like we heard that he took Darjeeling tea as present for the Queen. Who makes that tea? Who are the people who make that tea? Have you any idea? Yeah, the local people, of course. yeah, somebody who wanted me to do a story on the tea makers, she said about the tea tribe. I don't know what she meant, but tea tribe. It's very convenient for us to say they're the tea tribes, right? But and they are the local people, and they are descendants of people who actually planted those, you know, the tea bushes. Tea bushes in Darjeeling go back to 150 years. British India, you know, the company, they stole it from China, and then they made these plantations. All these, it used to be a forested land. Now, who did all that work of setting up tea gardens over there? Who did all this work of, you know, the whole, what we know as nation building, state building activities over there, right? So we all go to Darjeeling for tourism, but have we ever wondered, like, who are they? Are they Indians? Would you call them Indians? Would you call them non-Indians? What language do they speak? Any idea what language do they speak? Okay. All right, Lepcha Nepali. So they speak Nepali, right? And Nepali is a language that's spoken in where? Nepal, right? So let me come to, you know, more recent, I don't know how many of you followed this, but there was recently a kind of news which must have been somewhere with Karma did it for East Mojo. There was this, and a couple of national media also did it, and you know, there was this thing about Indian National Women's Conference, was it? NGO. We have our Independence Day coming up, and there was this competition that they had for Azadi Ka Mahotsav. So they invited songs, patriotic songs, right? And two singers from Kalimpong, they made an entry from North Bengal, from Darjeeling, they made an entry, and the song was in Nepali. And she did not accept that, you know, entry at first, saying that it's in a foreign language. We in India, it's Azadi after all, it's about India. And how can we have foreign language Megana? So why was this controversial? Hello? Anybody knows why it was this controversial? Oh, does anybody know, Nepali could be an Indian language? Anybody can really guess? Okay, you always, I know you know North Bengal, Northeast very well. Anybody else? No. So yeah, I think this is something that we as journalists have failed, the educationists have failed to tell you that Nepali is an Indian language. It's scheduled, it's in the constitution. And you know, since 1992, it's an Indian language, it's lingua franca of the people living not only in Darjeeling, but you know, many northeastern parts, and also Bhutan, like, you know, it's the language of the hills. It's like the Hindi of the hills, for that matter, when Hindi is spoken in large parts of North India. So in spite, so I think that kind of tells us, like I'm here in Jaipur, you know, and it tells us how little we know about our, we don't have to really be interested in Northeast to know this. You know, we just have to do our textbooks, you know, the civics properly, where we know how many, there are 22 scheduled languages in India, and Nepali is one of them. So when you talk about identity, and you know, all of you must have heard about Gorkhaland, yeah, what happens Northeast, Darjeeling, ghumne ja sakte ki nahi ja sakte, is it peaceful, is there a strife there? You know, this is where the identity thing comes in, and people, you know, a lot of people like say, like, what is Gorkhaland for? You know, why do people in Darjeeling want Gorkhaland? This is where they want Gorkhaland, because this is where, you know, they feel that they are not accepted as Indians. Even though they speak an Indian language, and that is where and this is the identity politics that he talks about, this is where people want to be seen as Indians. And another thing, like, you know, when, another thing about identity, when you speak about Gorkha, I would like to say a little bit about the Gorkha identity, right? What is the Gorkha identity? When you think about a Gorkha, what do you think? What anybody thinks is a martial race, right? You think about the cookery, oh, they are very brave, oh, they are, right? And the other part of it, oh, they are all Darwans, Chaukidars. And you know, you're not alone. You're not alone. This misconception or this stereotype is there with everybody, including, you know, when Mr. Modi, that he was not even a Prime Minister there. He had gone asking for votes to Darjeeling, right? So he was asking votes to the Gorkhas, bhaiyo and behno. He said, Gorkha ka sapna, mera sapna. And he also said, कि कहीं भारत में हर कोने में कोई करोड़ा का सामान गोदाम पे रख के 50 रुपए का ताला लगा के आराम से सोता है क्योंकि यहाँ पे गोरखा गार्ड कर रहा होता है. So he was not being, he was very lenient in the sense he was trying to speak to his own voters whom he was trying to woo, but he did not know that the race goes beyond this so-called martial identity, so-called this. So there is a lot of anger among the people. They did not outrage over Mr. Modi's comments because he was Mr. Modi. Nobody outraged. Had it been anybody else, because there have been, when a radio jockey did that, when Prashant Tamu was running for Indian Idol, it really led to the rise of a movement, right? So there was no outrage, but this is our understanding कि okay, यहाँ पे ये गोरखाज हैं, ये लोग कुकरी चलाते हैं, ये लोग अच्छे दरबार हैं, और they are so faithful. I really trust them. It's that is something really angers the people out there. So yeah, I would like to, not take much more time, but just like in the Northeast, even Darjeeling, it's a very diverse place. Even within this Indian Gorkha Nepali construct, there are people who speak different languages, there are different customs, there are and they are more than just that cookery, it's not just that. So people want to be heard, they want to be accepted, and this diversity, the diverse identity, and this is where the politicians, they time and again you will hear about the Gorkhaland demand, which is sort of now fizzled off, the politics of it, but people on the ground, they're very, very, very passionate about it, about the state, and they're only, the only thing that they want about it is to live in dignity, to live with acceptance, and to be able to be proud about your language and traditions. That is not just, that is thrust upon them. And I think I'll give it back to Salik so that he can now ask other questions.
Thank you. So I guess we have 10-15 minutes. So I'll come on just all three of you. I just want to quickly touch upon two things. One, this entire new chest thumping nationalism. So is it hurting the local subnationalism? And B, if you had a superpower, so what is that one thing which you really want to solve? So all three of you can answer these two questions.
You start.
Thank you. I hope I'll not be booked for sedition. There are many times when you just feel so alienated in this country. You just feel that people come and stereotype you, and they look at you as museum pieces in that cleanest village or in Kaziranga, and then they go back and they don't really care. So you sometimes wonder, in fact I've said this, whether our ancestors made the mistake of signing the instrument of accession. But what choice did they really have at that time? I think these are issues that we deal with on a daily basis. There is a general lack of acceptance for the so-called outsiders, and that is why you still have demands for an instrument that dates back to 1873, the Eastern Bengal Frontier Regulation Act, which brought in the inner line permit.
It was meant for controlling
it was, the British are very wise. So they wanted the tribes, so-called fierce tribes at that time, to be kept away from the mainstream Indian because a lot of resources were there in the hills. Even today we have mineral resources, we have tea, and at that time the British were planting tea, and these so-called fierce tribers were coming down to raid those tea gardens. So they created these inner lines and outer lines to keep people from the mainland Indian subcontinent, keep them from going into these places, and to keep those fierce tribes from coming in. So it was a kind of a two-way traffic that they used. But that instrument is being demanded very, very agitatedly today. there's a very, very vigorous demand in Meghalaya. We're heading for elections in 2023, and as the election dates approach, this demand for the inner line permit, which will entail that every Indian citizen wanting to come to Meghalaya will have to get a proper permit. It's like a visa to come into the region. Interestingly, the Modi government granted the inner line permit to Manipur in 2017, just before the elections, and they might just grant it to Meghalaya. The point is, it's a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you want to create employment, you need the private sector to come in. That's a region that is very, very literate and has a good command over the English language, courtesy the missionary schools that had come there earlier on. The missionaries provided education and health care. So you have an educated population, but that population is migrating out. Anywhere you go, in any part of the country, you'll find all these northeastern boys and girls being stereotyped as people who can massage in hotels, who can be employed in beauty parlors and so on. There is no employment within the region, and you still want this inner line permit. Actually, the region is a very fertile place for the IT industry. The IT industry is a clean industry, non-polluting. We could have had that going for us, especially when, as Karma or somebody said, a lot of investment has been made for digital connectivity. So that is the key for us. But with the inner line permit coming in all of these states except Assam, and I hope that Assam too.
Explain very briefly about ILP, because I don't think I
The ILP is, the inner line permit is an instrument that could be related to the Eastern Bengal Frontier Regulation Act of 1873. I hope I'm correct, not 1873 or 1878, one of those dates. So it treats the region where the inner line permit is implemented as a maybe security-centric region, a region that people are afraid of being exploited by the rest of the country, and this has always been there, the subnationalism that has led to ethnic conflicts. If you go back to history, in 1979 in Meghalaya we had a very violent conflict, and the targets then were Bengalis. A lot of Bengali people had to leave the state, they had to sell their properties overnight. And then in 82, 85, 87, we had a movement against the Nepali population. So it's part of our history that we have these occasional outbursts where we think all the problems in our part of the world are created by these so-called outsiders. And this is part of identity politics, and it helps the vote-catching machinery. When politicians can't show what they've done in 5 years, these are very easy kind of alibis for them to get back to power and say, when I come to power, I'm going to ensure that you get the inner line permit. In fact, in Meghalaya, the pressure groups made sure that the MLAs walked to the assembly and passed a resolution that they want the inner line permit. So we can be sure that it will come to Meghalaya as well by 2023, and then we will find that tourism will go down. Tourism is our mainstay. There are so many homestays, there are so many restaurants that have come up, there are so many eating joints. All these are going to suffer if you have the inner line permit, although they say it's going to be very easy, you can apply for it online, but it's not so easy. People don't want to go into a place where they feel unwanted. Anything else?
Yeah, Karma, if you can, one superpower.
So I think I already have a superpower, and that is to be able to tell stories. So that was the tipping point. I said I want to go back to the Northeast, left a great job at CNN, and at a time when I was getting more international opportunities, I thought it's the right time to go back and do something for my region. so it was great. So we started East Mojo. What I'm also seeing are green shoots in the Northeast. Like Patricia said, that the ministers are going. I have at least personally seen one or two of those ministers actually go and meet communities, not just do a drama. In my case, one of the ministers walked a very difficult path down to see my cousin's bakery, which is doing very well in the small-scale sector. By green shoots, I mean our youth want to do something. So you have one of the highest ecosystems of startup ecosystem in Manipur. Manipur is leading. I think it's one of the highest in India as far as startups are concerned, and they are doing a fantastic job. Some of those startups that I know personally, Zeroni Stephen Hillwild, she makes chocolates. Some of her chocolates are Bhut Jhalokia, the world's spiciest chili, Bhut Jhalokia flavored. She's doing a lot of stuff on horticulture, Forbes under 40, so she's doing a brilliant job. There is a young man who got a phenomenal money investors for his smokeless chulas that he started in. So I see green shoots. The other thing that I'm seeing gradually happen is the push for roads. The highways are being widened. The pace was very difficult before because of the militancy. So whenever a contractor went there, he had to first take care of his workers, this, that, and also had to pay a tax to the militants or the local bodies who would come and demand a ransom or a tax to start their job. All that is going away now because agreements are being made. I know personally of two highway projects in Nagaland, in a very difficult area, which could go through because of communities. I see that more and more communities are coming forward now, saying that we want to join a mainstream. We are fed up of this politics. They are seeing through. It will take time. I think 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But if all these obstacles are removed, and I am seeing that edgy energy that I saw when I went to Delhi for the first time in the 2000s, NCR growing, the call centers in Gurgaon happening, the same kind of edgy energy I'm picking up in the Northeast, which is good for the region, especially among the youth. I already told you about the music, we just don't, if you want to do a session on Northeast, it'll take the whole day, maybe 2 days, and it won't be boring at all, because we'll get you fantastic musicians, great storytellers, great weavers, you'll be mesmerized, we'll empty your pockets, we've got such good stuff to sell you. So, but we can't, because we don't have flights to bring those goods to Jaipur. We don't have trains to bring our fruits. Arunachal grows more kiwis than New Zealand now, We have kiwi, wine, we've got fantastic stuff, we've got so much meat. And because of the meat, I'm 15 kgs, heavier now. It's just fantastic, you love it, it's for the foodies. So, those are the things that we see. But politicians will always pull us back. In Sikkim, when we had the inner line, we fought to remove the inner line because we saw as an impediment to our tourists coming. And once tourism started coming, the government of Sikkim has to do nothing. We take care of the tourists because we as the people of Sikkim need to take care. Of course, there are Bengalis also who've come from Calcutta and working side by side, but that's how we do it, because there are too many tourists. 5 lakh, 6 lakh is the population of Sikkim. In a season, we get 30 lakh tourists. बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाता है. But do come to Sikkim. Thank you.
I'll answer your question about the identity in terms of hyper nationalism, and then also about what I worry about Darjeelings and Bengal is because now in Bengal there is a pushback against Hindi Hindu nationalism, and they are trying to be more Bengali, and there was once they wanted to impose Bengali. So that will alienate the people of the hills further, and they might, and there, I don't think I see that going down, and again there will be people, what happens when we are alienated. So that's one big worry, that it might get even worse. And also, what happens, I would like to briefly touch upon this, that when we speak about Bengali identity at West Bengal, it's a very Bengali identity. It's defined by Calcutta at its center. There is no effort on the part of West Bengal state to really look as diverse or inclusive. And that, as long as they don't really adopt that, I don't see people in the hills being happy. Because on the one hand, you kind of say that we won't allow Gurkhaland because we own the place, or I don't know, how to look at it. But on the other hand, you don't want to give people that place in your identity or in your, main narrative, and that doesn't really go well. Now, what can we do about it? I think, like Karma has gone back to his, telling stories from the Northeast and bringing these stories to us. What I realize is, people in Darjeeling, and it's for them to tell their stories and and as journalists, I think, we can do that. Local reporters can do that. Tell the stories that why, most of the people just see it as a law and order problem. Whenever there's a strike, whenever there's an agitation, they don't go beyond that. And media also never really digs any further. So I think tell the story that why is there a conflict? Why is there an identity issue? And also, like in India, we Indians must understand, and not just in this border, not just in all borders that we have with other countries and neighbors. It's a very fluid border. And before, people have come and gone even before the Indian state was formed. Sometimes we've crossed borders, and sometimes borders have crossed us. And and that is very true for Darjeeling, because Darjeeling at one time it was with Sikkim, and then it was with Nepal, then with British India, then Sikkim, and Darjeeling has a very, very, very complex history. And the people's identity is therefore very complex. If this simple thing that we don't accept, and you may not I do feel that you may not know the history of a place, fine, I don't know so many things about Rajasthan, but I think we can be educated enough to understand that all kinds of different people make India. There is no line, a border line that's saying that this makes you Indian and it doesn't make you Indian. And, and then we accept the fact that, this identity, we don't put identity in that box. Like, aap kahan se hain, hum Rajasthan se hain. Then I see that, okay, aap, ye honge. Because this question, aap kahan se hain, hum Maharashtra se hain, to matlab aap Marathi. I've grown up in Maharashtra, but I'm from Madhya Pradesh. These kind of, I think we really need to work that out as far as the identity thing is concerned. And about development and all that, I think whatever they said, it also holds true for Darjeeling and Salik.
Thank you. So I guess we are running short of time, so if we have questions, we'll quickly take one question only, and after that we'll wrap up, because we are seriously running short of time. Only one question. Or perhaps...
Hello sir, I'm Rajesh Das from Paljor University. Now my question is for you. As you said that I'm a Bengali by the way, so I'm from Calcutta. So I really understand the point, the urge of Bengal having this, that we need to force, we need to speak in Bengali more than Hindi. But I feel that is a very important step at the same time, because Bengali is a language which is now slowly forsaken by Bengalis themselves. It is like English पढ़ेंगे तो हमें नौकरी मिलेगी, बंगाली पढ़ेंगे तो कहाँ मिलने वाली है. तो हमारी जो मातृभाषा है वो खोते जा रही है.
Yes, I am. So if you can quickly answer the question, and for the rest of the questions, all the three panelists will be here, so you can...
না এটা অবশ্যই ঠিক, বাংলা বলতে হবে, রাইট? বাঙালিরা বাংলা বুঝতে হবে, রাইট? Bengalis will speak Bengali, সেটাতে কোনো প্রবলেম নেই. What I'm trying to say is, Bengali শুধু বাঙালি নেই. There are others who speak other languages, right? And equal right that you talk about, or duty to speak Bengali so that the language doesn't die, whatever you call it, it also holds true for people who speak Nepali. And Nepali is an official language of communication in Bengal, in Sikkim, apart. So I think when you impose a language, you can do without imposing on the people of the hills. And tell them to speak Nepali. Call them to Calcutta, ask them to speak Nepali in Calcutta. Kota Bangla movie ache dekhane, you have characters, Nepali characters which are good. I don't know, they keep saying, Darjeeling. Darjeeling is all about shooting films, but not a single character you'll find who is a Nepali character. Or there'll be some caricature of a Darwan or something, or a villain. But why are, Rabindranath Tagore never really wrote about, he spent his time in Hong Kong. So from the time of Rabindranath Tagore, it ain't like Bengali, like
Mainstream
Ora,
Bengali.
Amra. Amra is like we, the Bengalis, Ora, everybody else.
Thank you. So if you have any other question, you can separately. I'm really sorry we are running short of time. So thank you so much, Karma, Anuradha, Patricia, ma'am. It was really nice having you here. So thank you so much.
Next.